Be real, up to a point, and be happy. My name is Archie Dunlop. This is Talking Astrology with Archie, and it is Wednesday, August the 19th, 2026. In this video, I will be talking about a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Neptune. Arguably, this is the main aspect of the day, and I'll also be talking about some of the other stuff going on astrologically. And once I've done that, I'll be going through the 12 signs, and I will finish the video with an I Ching reading. So let's start with the overall picture. So here is a chart for today, Wednesday, August the 19th, set for noon New York time, and the moon is still in Scorpio. So it was in Scorpio yesterday and still there. And, there it is, moon at 21 Scorpio. So, wherever you are in the world, the moon, the day will end with the moon in Scorpio, late Scorpio. So the moon is out of the Via Combustor, because the Via Combustor being the first half of Scorpio. So that might create a certain amount of stability or increased stability, at least compared with the first half of Scorpio. And like yesterday, the moon is in mutual reception to Mars. So Mars is in early Cancer. The moon and Mars are in each other's signs. And so, when you've got the moon in mutual reception to Mars, it just makes the moon of Scorpio work just so much better. Because, normally the moon, you see, it's in Scorpio, it's fallen, because it's exalted in Taurus, therefore it's fallen in Scorpio. But, with that mutual reception, it just makes things so much better, so much easier. And, it's quite dynamic. With that mutual reception to Mars, because normally the moon in Scorpio can be a bit sort of brooding and doesn't want to do things, and is perhaps very much sort of caught up in its own feelings. But with this mutual reception, I think we can actually start to take action. And so if there's something that we really want to do that's really important to us, then maybe we can be successful. Although we should not forget that we can have a continued situation where there are no planets in Earth. And we're not going to have a resolution to this until the end of a week when the sun moves into Virgo. And so, when you've got a lack of Earth, sure, one can try to take action, but one's actions can be based on, for example, theory or our own emotions. And that's perhaps a problem, with being over-emotional or thinking about too much. We think that our thoughts or our feelings represent reality, when in fact they don't represent reality. They represent our subjective view of reality. And yes, thoughts can be subjective just as much as feelings can be. And so it may be that actually we just have to wait until the end of a week, until next week when the sun is in Virgo, before we can really start to ground things. And additionally, we have a first quarter moon developing. I mean, I talk about this first quarter moon, quite a lot in this video. I may occasionally say last quarter moon by mistake. That's just a slip of the tongue, by the way. It is a first quarter moon we've got coming up because we had an eclipse, new moon eclipse a week ago, and now the moon has moved on. It's now in Scorpio. And, when you've got a first quarter moon, this is, in some respects, quite fortunate because, the moon is waxing. And so, it's getting larger in the sky. The waxing part of the lunar cycle tends to be more fortunate than the waning part. And, the moon is in mutual reception to Mars. And so this can be about, how, thinking back to the eclipse, we may have had a new start with the eclipse, but what now? What actually are we going to do? And this first quarter moon may be a call for action. with Moon in mutual reception to Mars, we think there are things we need to do, and we need to get on with it, because if we don't start to put things into action now, we might lose the lunar cycle, and that might be how we see it. And what are we going to do by the time of the full moon? I mean, the full moon is in just over a week, and that full moon is in Pisces. So that's certainly something that we need to be thinking about. Additionally, Mars is making a semi-sextile to Uranus. Now, this Mars-Uranus semi-sextile is taking place at the same time as a heliocentric Mars-Uranus conjunction. And when I look at the heliocentric picture in a moment, you'll be able to see that Mars-Uranus conjunction heliocentrically. And so Mars and Uranus are making a 30-degree aspect. And so Mars-Uranus together can be quite a difficult pairing, can be quite explosive, can be dangerous, can be about things going wrong, it can be accident prone, it can also be quite willful. And so Mars in Cancer, semi-sextile Uranus in Gemini, we kind of want things to be done in a particular way, Mars in Cancer. We can be very stubborn about it. But then Uranus represents a destabilizing factor. Uranus in Gemini in particular. Uranus in Gemini is something perhaps we don't want to hear about, we don't want to know about, but it needs to be thought about. But it represents the new Uranus in Gemini, a disruptive energy, which we need to somehow integrate without getting too mad about it. So if we're presented with the new, or something revolutionary and radical, we shouldn't just dismiss it, and certainly we shouldn't get angry about it. It may be something that we do indeed need to incorporate into our life. And then if you think about this video, I've given it the sort of a subtitle, "Be real, be happy." I mean, why have I done that? And it's to do with the fact that we've got a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Neptune, which I'm just going to talk about, in a moment. But first of all, I wanted to discuss the situation from the perspective of, say, of Australia and New Zealand. I also want to look at the heliocentric chart. So here is today from the perspective of Sydney, Australia, and so you can see that the moon is earlier in the sign. It's at 14 degrees 36 noon in Sydney. So this chart is representative of Australia and New Zealand and East Asia. What that tells us is that in the first part of the day, the moon will be in the via combustor. I said at the beginning of this video that the moon is in late Scorpio. It is out of a via combustor, but from an Australasian perspective, no. Certainly up until lunchtime, early lunchtime in Sydney, the moon will be in the via combustor. In New Zealand, that'd be a couple of hours later, so that would be sort of early afternoon. Up until the early afternoon, the moon will be in the via combustor. And, that's not to say that anything terrible is going to happen. I think that it may just feel a bit more sort of agitated, particularly when you look at the moon. It's applying to a square of Mercury. Now that moon square Mercury is something you may not experience if you're in the Americas or in in Europe, but from a perspective of Australia and New Zealand, that moon square Mercury just could be present, and it just could be just a feeling of agitation, and something is not being entirely resolved, and perhaps when things don't go to plan, that could be annoying. But it's the moon; it moves quickly, and as you move into the late afternoon, the moon square Mercury will okay, by the evening the moon square Mercury will have dissipated, but I mean, again, don't worry about it too much. The moon is a fast mover, and yeah, as far as a Vir combustor is concerned, yeah, by the late afternoon, mid-afternoon, that won't be something to worry about. And then there is the heliocentric picture. So if we put the sun at the center of the solar system, there's the Mars-Uranus conjunction I was talking about. So we have a Mars semi-sextile Uranus, geocentrically. We also have Mars conjunct Uranus, heliocentrically. And so that might sort of give us that sort of Uranus feel to today, that Mars-Uranus feel to the day. And notice that Mars is starting to make a trine to Pluto. It's made the conjunction to Uranus. It's now making a trine to Pluto. So that could stir things up. And the concept of change and transformation could be quite important, but are we going to actually be able to make real change? Are we really going to be able to ground it? Well, maybe that will be difficult, but it's because there is just a general lack of grounding today, and it's not because of a heliocentric picture. It's just because of this. I think this lack of Earth is just becoming. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but to my mind, I think it is an important factor. And, you could say that a lack of Earth is going to be particularly important when you have got Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune. So here is the Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune, which this aspect, London time, actually takes place right at the end of the day. In fact, if you're in Europe, it's taken continental Europe. It's tomorrow it's tomorrow Thursday, and certainly if you're in Australia or New Zealand, this aspect is about tomorrow. But it is developing, and certainly in the Americas, it is going to be an importance. I think it's a good idea to talk about it now, and so. There is the sesquiquadrate, Mercury at 1856 Leo, sesquiquadrate Neptune at 3 degrees 56 Aries. So, when you've got Mercury sesquiquadrate Neptune, that just does say something about the mind and our cognition. And so sesquiquadrate Neptune, it's easy to get confused. Mercury in Leo likes things to be done in a particular way. Mercury in Leo can be about rigid thoughts at its worst, I think. We've got an idea, this is the way it should be, and then sesquiquadrate Neptune, something happens, and we feel something, we realize that things are more complicated, but we just decide to pretend that nothing has happened. And so Mercury in Leo could just stay where it is, be rigid ideas, while everything around it is, I won't say falling apart, but it's just becoming weird and perhaps confusing, perhaps with an emphasis on the emotional. And Mercury in Scorpio is just holding back everything. So that's perhaps Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune in a negative sense, but Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune can also say something about one's sensitivity and perhaps one's psychic abilities, being able to really pick up on things, people's thoughts, people's feelings, people's motivations, and so it does give a sensitivity which can be useful provided it doesn't get out of control. So you can see the problem with a Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune when you've got no Earth. It could people having just fantastic ideas. And it's okay to have fantastic ideas, provided we don't try to put them into action, provided we don't think we understand the truth of the matter. And, this is going on all the time, isn't it? It seems to be worse than ever. People... I don't know why it is, but right now it seems that people have a set of beliefs, and quite a strong set of beliefs, and they expect the truth to manifest according to those beliefs. If I believe this, then it's going to work out just like I believe. I think we saw this in the 2024 election. People believe that Trump was a complete nightmare, that could be the worst possible thing that could possibly happen to America. They also thought he was an absolutely horrible person. And so because of that, they believe that Trump was going to lose. But that's not really very logical. I'm not giving any opinion on Trump here, but I'm just giving you an example. And there are other things going on around us. You look at, for example, what's been said about Iran. I mean, how slow certain people in the West have come to a realization that America is not winning in Iran. And that it may be the case that Iran is winning, but and if you're a decision maker and you've got a belief about something, and then you can't allow that belief to impact your sense of reality. But that is what's happening. So for our own selves, we have to distinguish between what we believe and what is actually the case. So there is certainly a problem with that Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune. I mean, there could be a problem, but it is slightly more involved than that when we look at the midpoint structure of Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's look at the 90-degree dial. And so we're looking at the midpoints, and there is Neptune, there's Mercury. So on the 90-degree dial, a sesquiquadrate is shown as an opposition, and so that's why we've got Mercury opposition Neptune in this dial, even though in the 360-degree dial, the regular chart, they're in 135-degree aspect. And the thing that really strikes me is these midpoints. There's the sun and the moon. So the reason the sun and the moon appear to be conjunct is because the sun and the moon are applying to a square. So on a 90-degree dial, the squares are shown as conjunctions. And on the other side, we've got Jupiter. So we have got Mercury on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. We've also got Mercury on the Moon-Jupiter midpoint. Now, if we look at that in isolation, that is a really good midpoint. I mean, Sun-Jupiter, Moon-Jupiter, it's about happiness. It's about being positive. It's about just seeing, what is possible, and being optimistic. Whatever the situation, we can put a good spin on it, and there can just be a genuine enthusiasm and happiness, and that can really help us in terms of how we perceive what is going on around us. And so that changes things. It may not be so bad when we got Neptune on the Sun-Jupiter and the Moon-Jupiter midpoint. Now, you can be negative about that. If there is a view that might be about disappointment and delusion. If you've got Neptune on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint, there's your Sun-Jupiter, there's your optimism. But what are you happy about? You're deluding yourself, and certainly there is a possibility of deluding yourself, particularly if you're a military planner and you're trying to tell yourself that the war against Iran is going well, or there might be some other war where you think that Western interests are going well when they're actually not. So yes, there is delusion, but as individuals, we have got more freedom than a politician or a military leader. We can decide how we can use this configuration, and so you can see that it's important to get real, to be real. With Neptune on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint, there's certainly the possibility of just getting caught up in a load of fantasy. Absolutely possible. Of course, where you've got fantasy, you've got disappointment. But there's also the scope for here genuine happiness. Mercury on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. And when you see Neptune at its highest level, it is dissolving into that happiness, perhaps on a personal level, but not perhaps in terms of going so far as to make a decision. So we can be really happy and really optimistic about something, but we're not going to press a button. We're not going to make a commitment on the basis of that happiness. Not now. This is not a time to really be making absolute decisions. I think we should probably wait until sun goes into Virgos until we get some grounding here. But for the moment, we can be realistic. Realistic is not the same as being pessimistic. We can know that we might be deluding ourselves, but we're not going to test it. We're just going to stay in this position of being optimistic, and we know that if we don't commit ourselves, then things will develop, and we can take something that might appear to be far-fetched, and we can make it real. And so it's perhaps about getting that balance right. We don't want to pour cold water on anything, but at the same time, we don't want to make crazy commitments on the basis of something that, might not be real. So I think that as individuals, I think we can turn this Mercury-Neptune Sesquiquadrate into something very positive, and we can be happy provided we have some sense of realism. So now I want to turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, August the 19th, 2026. Aries. If you've been listening to my videos recently, you'll know that I've been putting quite a bit of emphasis on the fact that there have been no planets in Earth signs. In general, in my astrology, I do put great store in the 4 elements. And so when you've got a lack of earth, in general, there can be a lack of grounding, and things just can be a bit sort of up in the air, or they can be rather too intense, and this isn't necessarily very desirable. And it's possible to go off on tangents, to be going down roads which may in the end head nowhere. And so, as far as you're concerned, Aries, right now, the moon is in Scorpio, and because the moon is in Scorpio, you might be a little more intense than usual, especially as the moon is still in making a mutual reception to Mars in Cancer. So this reception, carries on through today, and this reception, it certainly has its advantages. I think that you are emotionally quite aware right now, certainly more aware than usual. Emotion, the sort of watery side of things, isn't always your strongest suit, but I think right now it is. But it can sometimes go too far, and so you have to perhaps set some limits on yourself and ask yourself where exactly you are going. And, if possible, do try to find that balance, and, do not be sort of knocked off course. And, as far as being knocked off course is concerned, Mars is making a semi-sextile to Uranus. So, Mars in Cancer, semi-sextile Uranus in Gemini. So this represents something that, could knock you off course, but it's not something you should be ignoring. Uranus can be something you become aware of. Uranus is a planet of, revolutions, earthquakes, shocks. So, you have your path, you're perhaps in your sort of emotional space, and then something comes up and you don't fully know how to deal with it, and you might perhaps respond in a way that is perhaps too extreme, and you might ignore something. So you've got to get the balance right. You've got to accept what you can see. You've got to accept what you can see or perceive, but at the same time you don't want to be completely overwhelmed by it. So I think that is is quite important, and as far as possible, do try to get that balance right, and not to go too far, in any one direction. And additionally, the moon is starting to make a square to the sun. So this square to the sun is not actually exact until tomorrow, which is tomorrow, Thursday. But I mean, I think it's worth mentioning because moon square sun, that means we're moving into sort of a first quarter moon, and so with a first quarter moon, it might be a certain crisis of action. What happens now, and so you have perhaps got involved in something that seems to be working well, and then right now, over the next couple of days, you may see a complication, and you may decide to take that complication into into a new level, and you may exaggerate a complication. I mean, don't make things more complicated than they actually need to be, and as far as is possible, try to find some grounding, and that's really what you're looking for, deep down. With Mars in Cancer, you want security, you want things to be, completely straightforward, and that is a great place to be. But somehow you might get distracted, but you needn't get distracted. You should be familiar enough with your own emotions now not to be distracted, not to take your own emotions too seriously, because that can be the way it goes, isn't it? If you're familiar with something, if you're comfortable with something, then there should be no need for exaggeration. So I'm sorry to have gone on this in this vein. It's not what the whole day is about. I think that as far as today is concerned, I think that you can be genuinely happy with the way things are going, and I think happiness is a theme of today for all of us, but you in particular. And I think that you can benefit from other people in general. You don't have to do things all by yourself, and you don't have to take things too seriously. I mean, you might, but I don't think that is necessary. It's true that Saturn is starting to make an opposition to Venus, or rather Venus is starting to make an opposition to Saturn. And that seriousness, and its perhaps intensity, could go too far, and you might sort of have a negative impact on other people, when in fact you should be actually having quite a positive impact, because you can be enthusiastic, you can sort of indeed make new contacts, and you can introduce yourself here, there and everywhere if you want to, because in spite of your concerns, and I think that some Arians are concerned, you are fundamentally safe. You are being looked after, and you understand what's going on, and you can indeed read the room, and I think that is important. I don't think that you're going to make faux pas today, that you're going to do something which is completely outrageous. No, I don't think so. I think that you do have a fundamental subtlety which allows you to make the right decisions, especially on a social level, and so resist the temptation to take things too seriously. And that's especially the case when it comes to relationships. With this Venus-Saturn opposition, this Venus-Saturn opposition is it's a couple of days from exactitude, but it's really getting there. And it just could be that you're in a situation where, in spite of, I think, good social skills, in a general sense, when it comes to dealing with one particular person, you might just put them off. You might even seem a little bit scary. I mean, that can be something that sometimes Arians can be. I mean, when Arians want to be scary, they can certainly be scary. But right now, try as far as is possible to be welcoming. And you might say, oh well, yeah, but you don't know what someone's like. How can you judge them? Well, you can judge them very well. I mean, if you're honest with yourself, I think that from an emotional perspective, and indeed from an intuitive perspective as well, you do understand. And if you understand the way it's going, how it's unfolding, then I think that you're certainly able to make the right social decisions. Taurus. We're approaching a first quarter moon. Okay, the first quarter moon isn't today exactly. It's early tomorrow, but we're pretty much there. And what that means is that the moon is in Scorpio, and it's applying to a square of the sun. And yeah, if you're in the Americas, this evening there will be a first quarter moon, but other places it will be tomorrow. So yeah, the first quarter moon. That tells us something about the relationship between sort of now and the previous new moon. So we had this eclipse that everyone got so excited about a week ago, and now that eclipse is starting to develop, and you're perhaps starting to think about what exactly was it all about. And when I described the eclipse to you, Taurus, I was talking about the importance of your home, for example, your family, making sure that everything was securely rooted, anchored, if you like, and that did, I think, matter to you, especially as you're a Taurus. I mean, stability is something that really does matter to you. And now we've got the moon making a square to the sun, or starting to make a square to the sun. So it's all well and good knowing what your limits are, knowing what makes you feel comfortable, but there's just something else to consider. And with the moon moving through Scorpio, what you perhaps need to consider is other people. What are other people doing? What are particular people doing? And it might be that in terms of relationships, someone is doing something, saying something, suggesting something that you don't feel entirely comfortable with, or perhaps you're being pushed in a particular direction, and you want to hold firm. You just want to stick to what you have. You want to be happy where you are, but you kind of feel that deep down that someone has a point, but you don't want to accept that point. So with the growing influence of this first quarter moon, I think it is important to listen. Try to understand what other people are saying, particularly if that person is important to you. They have got they've got a message to deliver, and it's up to you whether you accept the message. But I think you need to accept the message. But just because you accept a message doesn't mean you have to take it on board. It's not like I don't know, you get a court summons or something and you have to sign it, and once you've accepted the summons or the whatever it is, you've got no choice. It's not like that. I think you can listen, and you can make a decision and give the other person every opportunity to explain themselves, but always keep your options open, and don't be concerned. That matters, not being concerned, because one aspect that is starting to develop now is an opposition between Venus and Saturn, and it is perhaps a difficult transition, because we've just had this Venus sextile Jupiter, which I've been talking about. It's still there, Venus sextile Jupiter. It's a great aspect. This Venus sextile Jupiter has hopefully given you the opportunity to really sort yourself out, and even if you haven't sorted yourself out, you can still sort yourself out. I think there are so many things you can do to make yourself just feel better about yourself, to feel more secure, to feel more together, to feel more with it, to prepare yourself. So that's all good. The question is, what are you preparing for? And Venus is making an opposition to Saturn, and this opposition to Saturn, it's like a transition. And Venus opposition Saturn can be a challenge. Venus is your ruler. It's opposition Saturn, and Saturn can be a problem. But we do have to look at the relative strength of Venus and Saturn. Venus is in its own sign in Libra. Saturn is in Aries. It's in its full. And so, with this Venus opposition Saturn, I think you have the advantage. And what Saturn can represent is just an issue, something that might bother you. Something perhaps psychological, and it's not something that you necessarily want to deal with, and it's easy to be quite concerned about it, but just something crops up. It's been developing, and it just may be a worry, and a worry that may actually be groundless. And this goes back to what I was talking about in terms of preparation with this Venus sextile Jupiter. If you are well prepared, if you are properly settled, and you've sorted out any worries, and you've sorted out any sort of chaos that might have been growing or developing around you, perhaps in your own home, so you're feeling good about yourself, then you'll be able to deal with this opposition to Saturn. You'll be able to put this opposition to Saturn in perspective. It will just be a little local difficulty, and you just deal with it, and it'll be okay. But of course, if you're not prepared and you haven't thought about what you're going to do, if everything is a complete mess and then Venus opposition Saturn comes along, you might be completely flawed. But I do think that would be fundamentally unnecessary, especially now, when Venus is in such a strong position. And additionally, the importance of preparation goes back to this first quarter moon. So if someone does something or says something that you weren't fully expecting, and if you hadn't thought it through, then you might not know how to respond, and yet that could be it could be a major distraction. And your mind is quite busy, in a positive and a negative sense. I've talked about the negative here with this Venus opposition Saturn. There is a positive side to it, as I have been saying for quite a long time. You're in a position where you are having all sorts of ideas. The ideas are coming sort of thick and fast, and these ideas can have sort of many dimensions. It could be just ideas for concrete action. That's one way of looking at it. But you might also find that there is something quite otherworldly going on. One of the big aspects today is a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Neptune. And this Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune is potentially about fantasies. It's about imagination, and it's about you imagining how things could be, but also things occurring to you from nowhere. You sort of having sort of a feeling that something else is going on. That it might be quite otherworldly, and it might relate to your spirituality, and it might be a little bit distracting, this Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune, because you're wondering how does it fit with what's going on out there in the real world, and is it a problem? And don't forget, as I'm really telling everyone, still no planets in Earth signs. I mean, that's my message in a way to all of the 12 signs. No planets in Earth signs, not until the end of a week, not until the sun moves into Virgo. And yet for a Taurus, you need that kind of grounding. And if with that lack of Earth, it just can be a bit sort of disconcerting. But you do have what it takes to, especially with this Venus sextile Jupiter, so to give yourself, not just security, but also a feeling of general happiness. Yes, happiness. And once you've sorted everything out, once you've secured everything, which I think you can do, then you're going to be okay. In fact, Taurus, you're going to be more than okay. Gemini. The main aspect today, at least as far as you're concerned, is a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Neptune. We've got a sort of subsidiary aspect, and that is a quintile between Mercury and Uranus. And so, those two aspects, they're what's going on. And of course, Mercury is your ruler. And, as far as those two aspects are concerned, both of them involve an outer planet, Mercury quintile Uranus, Mercury sesquiquadrate Neptune. And so this means that you're not necessarily going to be a typical Gemini right now. I mean, if you think about typical Gemini, well, what is a typical Gemini? Well, a typical Gemini is someone who has a rational, logical mind, someone who is able to think things through, and someone who is able to move on. I think that is important, to be able to move on from one thing to another, and you never take anything too seriously. That can be a Gemini trait. You take something seriously for 5 minutes, and then you move on to something else. But these two aspects have their own power. I mean, starting with a Mercury quintile Uranus, this is a quintile, and being a quintile, it is about what you are trying to create, with your conscious will. And it might be that you feel that things need to be more exciting, that things have just reached a stage where they need to change. It's got a little bit boring, a little bit stale, and let's stir things up. And so you might feel that you deliberately want to create some instability, or at least you want to start something new where you don't entirely know where you're going with it, but it could be disruptive, and if it gets people's attention, so much the better, because you want to indicate that something has changed, that there is a process of revolution. I mean, Geminis, in theory, quite like the idea of revolution, in theory, not necessarily in practice. And so Gemini, to an extent, I think that you are trying to stir things up, and I think you want to do this quite deliberately. You might even be developing a plan in terms of how you could stir things up. And maybe you know what you're doing. It's this Mercury quintile Uranus, I would have said, is quite optional. That's what I say about quintiles and biquintiles. You don't have to stir things up. You don't have to be dramatic. You don't have to have your one-person revolution. But you might want to. You might feel that it's the best way of achieving your aims. And then we've got Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune. I think the Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune is a more important aspect than the quintile to Uranus. And it develops over the course of the day. And so this Mercury quintile Neptune can be quite confusing. There's you, Mercury in Leo. You kind of you know how things are going. You have a clear idea about what you want. It's all looking good. And then the Sesquiquadrate to Neptune comes along, and just suddenly things become confusing. Things happen which you don't necessarily fully understand. I mean, it could be about other people. If you have a busy social life, they may be presenting you with things that you don't fully get. More people around, the greater the chaos. So that's one way of looking at it. But it just could be your general attitude, just feeling that this is not entirely easy. It's not as straightforward as you would like it to have been. And so you can see the contradiction here potentially. You're kind of wanting to create instability, a bit of instability, a bit of fun instability, be a bit of a revolutionary, but you don't want to go all the way. But once you start stirring things up, you then have to consider the consequences, and the consequences may not be so easy to deal with, at least to begin with. And so where is it all going? But I think it's important to have an open mind, because things can happen which you don't understand, but you nonetheless may be able to benefit from them. I mean, this really could be the case. And I think that it's important to be happy, but also to be grounded at the same time. Just to think about possibilities. So if you see a possibility, even if it's a far-fetched possibility, you don't have to just reject it. Say that this is just just too much. I don't think you have to do that. You can just explore it without committing yourself. And that's possibly the best way of handling things. Give your mind free rein. Don't feel that you have to put anything into practice. Probably you shouldn't be putting anything into practice. As I'm kind of telling everyone, there are no planets in Earth signs. And, with no planets in Earth signs, this is a time perhaps to enjoy the idea, but without actually committing yourself to that idea. And I think that really does matter. And just because you can't do something right now, you don't see a way to really turn something into reality, it doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. It's not. I think you're going to see an opportunity to put your ideas into practice, pretty soon. But not now. And don't forget, Uranus is moving through Gemini. Yeah, it is, and it will stays in Gemini, I think, until 2032. And so, the larger picture is that you are in the mood for change, in a real fundamental sense, and you can stir things up, as that Mercury quintile Uranus reminded you. You want that change. You're looking to put it into action, but you shouldn't be in too much of a hurry, particularly with that Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune, because yes, you could be distracted, but in your fantasies, in your imagination, it might suddenly occur to you that something might be possible. It could happen. And so if you have that thought, then do hold on to it, because while the situation isn't necessarily perfect now, I think that you can, in the end, really sort of get what you're looking for. So don't feel that it's the path ahead is blocked, because it's not. You just have to deal with some of the short-term chaos. And fundamentally, Gemini, from the perspective of luck, I mean, I think you are quite lucky at the moment, but I think you just have to go with the flow. And that can be sometimes quite difficult for Geminis. Geminis can be really bad at doing that. And, the reason Geminis are bad at that is because, they can think things out of existence. That is a Gemini trait. So, when things are flowing, when they're supposed to flow, it's all going well, but then you just have a thought, and one thought follows another thought, and you've reduced what could have been very beautiful into completely nothing. You've just reduced it into its component parts, and it's all gone. And so, you don't think too much, because that might spoil the magic. And there really could be quite a lot of magic today, if you don't ask too many questions. But you don't want to fall for the magic. So it's a really quite a difficult balance to get. But so you be aware of the possibilities, get excited about the possibilities, but at the same time, it's important to be real. Cancer. The moon is moving through Scorpio all day, and as I was kind of saying yesterday, maybe even the day before as well, the moon in Scorpio is in mutual reception with Mars in Cancer. And so, this mutual reception, I think it just does work well for you, with the moon and Mars being in each other's signs. And so the next time the moon is in Scorpio, in a month's time, Mars will still be in Cancer. So you've got another chance to take advantage of this. And then, of course, the moon moves into Leo, and then you have to wait a couple of years for Mars to come back into Cancer. So enjoy the mutual reception, while it lasts. And, it's a time when I think, Cancer, that you are perhaps, stronger than usual. And you have a clear sense of what you can do, and also your own power, with Mars being in your sign. And so you don't have to do anything in particular. You can just stand up for yourself without much effort, and at the same time you can really explore your own, creativity. I think you are pretty creative at the moment, with the moon in Scorpio. But the moon does make a square to the sun, or at least it's applying to a square of the sun. So, that means that we've got a first quarter moon coming up. That's the definition of this sort of this square. I mean, a square of the moon and the sun and the moon is either going to be a first quarter or a last quarter moon. I mean, this moon it's a first quarter moon. And so that is an important stage in the lunation cycle. And so this first quarter moon, I mean, it goes back to the eclipse. The eclipse is developing. We had the eclipse a week ago. And so issues that were starting to manifest a week ago are starting to form all over again. And it may be that you're just very aware of certain limits to your ideas, limits which might be cramping your style, and those limits might be of a financial nature. So, moon in Scorpio square that sun, and the sun is actually conjunct the south node as well. So that sun conjunct the south node could be talking about money, or it could be about the wrong attitude to money. But it's possible that financial concerns are kind of holding you back. And it's not like you should ignore the financial side of things, but you shouldn't allow the financial side of things to completely grind you to a halt. And that might be something that you have to grapple with, with this first quarter moon. But as I said, the moon and Mars are in mutual reception, so I'm fairly confident that you'll be able to make good progress with it all, and that you'll know what you need to do, because moon square sun can be a decision point. It can be a point where you get stuck, where all the potential of the eclipse just comes to nothing, or it can be a point where you really understand what needs to be done, and you can do it, and you can satisfy all parties. Your various concerns can be dealt with, and so that is perhaps a bit of a crunch point, but I do think you can handle it. And so this first quarter moon, or the moon square sun, I think it's exact if you're in the United States this evening, or tomorrow if you're not. And so that's something that you might want to think about. But don't worry about it, because as I said, the moon is, although it's in Scorpio, is in a strong position because of that connection with Mars. And talking about Mars does make a semi-sextile to Uranus. And so Uranus represents just something that you hadn't fully considered, or perhaps something you didn't really want to consider. It could be just a realization. Uranus in Gemini, Uranus is a planet connected with change, or the desire for change. And there's Mars in Cancer. You want to go do your own thing. You want to look after yourself. You want to move forward in your chosen direction. Then something occurs to you. You have a bit of a surprise, and it's quite subtle. Something just happens in a way that is rather unexpected, but it does happen, and you're not quite sure what to do, and you might assume a conflict with Mars semi-sextile Uranus. You think, oh, this is a serious situation. You've got to look after yourself, and this is especially the case if you take the view that you have been surprised by someone else, or something from outside yourself has surprised you. It's done something that you regard as being unwanted, and you might react badly to it. But if something unexpected does happen, consider the possibility that at some level, we're dealing with some kind of a psychological determination. And by psychological determination, meaning that in a sort of vaguely kind of Freudian kind of way, that we create things in our own, we just create things, and we might think that something has nothing to do with us, but in fact it's completely deliberate. It's like when you if you've ever been to see a therapist, and I don't know, you're stuck in traffic or whatever, and you're 10 minutes late for the appointment with the therapist, and you blame the traffic, but from a therapeutic point of view, or maybe from a point of view of psychological determination, at some level you deliberately were 10 minutes late, even if there appears to be a good reason. And I think that is an important part of the therapeutic relationship, or it seems to be in terms of my distant memories of being in therapy in the 1990s. That there is that determination, and so it's possible, Cancer, with this Mars semi-sextile Uranus, but at some level you have created something which seems to be nothing to do with you, but you did create it. You made particular choices, and those choices have created a situation that you may not be happy with. And it's easy to blame other people, and maybe people are to blame, but just consider, your own responsibility there. And that's just asking you to have some openness in terms of your own psychological processes. But I don't want to take the thing too far. I mean, fundamentally, you are able to look after yourself, and you're able to make your own decisions. And I think that provided you're honest with yourself on a psychological level, I think it can be a day where things really are happening and things are moving, and I think that you can really make the most, or continue to make the most, of this rather fortunate mutual reception between the Moon and Mars. Leo, we have a build-up to a first quarter moon. So the moon is in Scorpio. The sun is obviously in Leo. So the moon is moving towards a square of the sun. And this square is exact, this evening if you're in the United States. But if you're not in the Americas, it will be sometime tomorrow. And this square between the moon and the sun, it does relate to the eclipse. So a week ago we had the Leo total eclipse of the sun, which for many Leos did represent a new beginning, a fresh start, and you could really enjoy the Leo energy. So I hope you're able to really make the most of it, and you should be, because as I have been saying on sort of numerous occasions, you're on good form. Your mind is on good form. You have plenty of ideas. You're inspired, and you kind of know where things should be going, how things could develop if you were given the chance. But this first quarter moon may be a bit challenging. Moon in Scorpio square that sun in Leo. Moon in Scorpio represents a different view, and this moon in Scorpio is kind of asking you, well, how do you put it into practice, and can you put something into practice without causing instability? Moon in Scorpio is somewhat concerned about stability, making sure that everything is in order, and it's almost asking you to kind of get real, and not just get real on a material basis, but perhaps on an emotional level as well. So, if you have lots of plans and ideas and so forth, it might be that this first quarter moon is suggesting that there might be an emotional price. And you might think that you maybe can't do something because it would cause instability in another area. And that would not be the way to deal with the first quarter moon. You have to certainly respect the moon, but you can't give in to it. And so what you kind of need to do is start to think about ways in which you put your plans into action, but in such a way where they don't cause too much chaos, too much emotional chaos. Or, for example, you have to think about how members of your family might respond to you, particularly if you want to do things differently. And that might be what the moon in Scorpio represents, things relating to your root security, which are saying you can't do that because it would be too disturbing. We don't want to, upset the status quo. So going back to the energy of the eclipse and the inspirations of the eclipse, it was a great eclipse. It should have been a great eclipse, but you want to be able to see the eclipse through, and you have to kind of get through this challenge and making sure that things don't get too stuck. And in my video yesterday, I talked about mud and fortune being in the mud. But, mud has many ways of manifesting, and mud can be a bad thing. And so, you can get stuck in the mud, and find that all your plans come to nothing because it is kind of emotional mud, too much feeling, and just being stuck in a particular emotional state, and just not being able to move on, not being able to see your ideas through. But maybe you have to stay in the mud for a little bit, just to work out what's going on, just to be able to realize that there is another side to things, that perhaps it relates to your security, perhaps it relates to the opinions of or the emotional state of members of your family and other people close to you, but you just don't want to stay in that position for too long. So that might actually be a challenge today and tomorrow. You've got to kind of be able to pause without getting stuck. And there is a time for staying still, but when the moon moves into Sagittarius, which it will do tomorrow, that will be time to proceed, time to get on with it. And that is certainly something that I'll be talking about when I do your horoscope for tomorrow, Thursday. And additionally, Leo, this is a time when you really you really do want to make progress. I think that is very important to you. And you kind of know what has been holding you back. You know what is holding you back, and perhaps I've just been discussing some of the things holding you back, and and that can be frustrating. But if you keep moving, then well, okay, I've just said you need to pause for a little bit, but you just don't pause for too long. I mean, I think that is very important. So as you move into tomorrow, hopefully you will be able to sort of get going again. And we might have a bit of a sort of symbolism here of being in a cart, and you kind of go off a road, and the cart maybe gets stuck in some mud, and you have to get out, and you have to work out what's going on. You need to fix the wheel and so forth, and you do it, and then you can just get on with it and keep moving. Now, one aspect that we do have today, which I think could be quite significant, is a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Neptune. So Mercury is moving through your sign, and with this Mercury, you are optimistic. You have a lot of thoughts about what could be the case, what could happen, what you're going to do in the future. But then it makes this sesquiquadrate to Neptune, and as a result of this sesquiquadrate to Neptune, it just might be that your sort of imagination just goes into overdrive. You suddenly have lots of thoughts, not just thoughts, just feelings, and they come sort of thick and fast, and some of them are interesting. I mean, they may be really, really, really powerful, and you have to make sure that you don't get completely overwhelmed by them. I mean, as you could, but at the same time, Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It can relate to your spirituality. It can relate to your artistic sensibilities. Just starting to see, what is possible, having lots of ideas, yes, inspirations, and you might feel that you're in touch with something really beyond yourself. And in this light, you might find yourself feeling that, things are going to be okay, but there is a fundamental optimism here, which is, it's not about, anything of the material world. It's something of a spiritual nature, which is there, which is potentially sustaining you. And so in terms of your ideas and your thoughts, you can have positive thoughts, on many different levels, because right now you've got not just an active mind, but it's a mind which is which is fed by something else, and it's not just emotional slush. It's just a general knowledge. I'm sorry, I don't mean a general knowledge. A knowledge that something is out there, that there is a particular path, a particular route that you can follow, and that in the end it's all going to work for you. And so it's an interesting day, and I think probably the main challenge is to just negotiate that first quarter moon and just make sure that you perhaps take seriously other people, particularly your family, but you don't take them too seriously. What you don't want to do is turn a pause into a quagmire. Yeah, I mean that could happen because if you stay in one place, if you can perhaps spend a few minutes discussing things while you're standing in the mud, but if you spend hours standing in the mud, well, you might eventually sink into it, and that's not something you want to happen. Virgo. Mercury is doing some things today. I mean, Mercury makes two aspects over the course of a day. It makes a quintile to Uranus, and it also makes a sesquiquadrate to Neptune. And the quintile to Uranus is perhaps more straightforward than the sesquiquadrate to Neptune. So at the moment, Virgo, part of you is wanting to, keep things to yourself. You want to sort of keep your own counsel, and there are certain things that you don't necessarily want to reveal, and you have powerful thoughts, but no one entirely knows what you're thinking. Okay, I know, but no one ever knows what you're thinking. But you're just very aware right now that your thought processes are very particular, and people have no idea. And with Mercury quintile Uranus, you're maybe starting to think about the kind of changes you want to bring about. Because you're not complacent, Virgo. You're not at all complacent. You understand that things are changing, that you can't stay still, and that sometimes just things need to be shaken up. And Mercury with Mercury quintile Uranus, you're perhaps of the opinion that you need to initiate change, and that requires a plan almost. You have to decide, what do you need to do to have maximum impact? And if your mind is working like that, then I think that you can reach some really important conclusions, and you can actually create a strategy. And it starts with that will to change, and you do want change. And this change can take many forms, but in your case right now, it might be connected with your work, if you are working, or how you are expressing your desire to make progress, in the real world. And so if you have a plan, if you can develop a plan, I mean, I think that would be great. But just once you've developed a plan, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to just immediately put the plan into action. You might want to shelve it for a week. I mean, maybe you want to wait until the sun goes into Virgo, because at the end of a week on Sunday, the sun does move into your sign. Additionally, we have a sesquiquadrate between Mercury and Neptune, and this sesquiquadrate is perhaps more interesting, more complicated. Being a Virgo, you kind of want things to be straightforward. You want the details to be fleshed out. You want to know how it's all coming together, and Neptune can create an element of chaos. You start to become aware of something else. You thought it was all sorted out, and then you realize it's not sorted out at all, because you have to consider one thing and another thing, and there are things going on out there in the outside world. There are things going on in your own mind. There's your own concerns, there's your own worries, and so, in spite of your desire for order, Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune might really knock you off the path. I mean, that is a way in which Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune could work, but it doesn't necessarily have to work like that. And you have to start to think about how you fundamentally feel. And if you look at Mercury in the chart, you'll notice that Mercury obviously is in Leo, but it's making a conjunction to the Sun and Jupiter. A very wide conjunction, supposedly. So, if you look at Mercury and Jupiter are 7 degrees apart, and the Sun and Mercury are 7 degrees apart. But what that does mean is that Mercury is halfway between the Sun and halfway between Jupiter. It's halfway between the Sun and Jupiter. So, in the jargon, Mercury is on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. And this is something I talked about at the beginning of this video. I mean, Neptune is also sesquiquadrate the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. And, Sun-Jupiter is about being happy, being enthusiastic, thinking about, what actually is possible. And so, there are different ways in which this could work. But, I mean, I really think that you just have the capacity for knowing that things really can work out for you. And okay, you might have to wait until the Sun moves into Virgo, but you just have that knowledge. And there might be an element of fantasy there, because you've got Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune. And you've got to really work with what is possible. I mean, it may be, Virgo, that you have a fantasy about how you'd like things to be, and then you have to take that fantasy and be very Virgoan about it, and pare out all the stuff which just can't possibly happen, and turn what seems to be a crazed fantasy into actually a realistic plan. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying with Mercury quintile Uranus. It is about creating a plan, creating a set of steps, and these steps can, you proceed with these steps, and I'm confident that things can really work out. And it might not be for another week, but you start to be able to really ground it, because no planets in Earth signs so far, but that situation does change pretty quickly, because it's not just that on Sunday the Sun moves into Virgo, but a couple of days after that we got Mercury moving into Virgo. So there is a big change coming up, and I think a change that is very much a favourable change, certainly from a Virgo perspective. Now, we could see this Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune in other ways. It can be about your psychic abilities. That's a standard way of looking at Mercury Neptune. And Mercury Neptune might indicate that you have a profound sensitivity to what is going on around you, what people are thinking, what people are feeling. And at first it might be a bit disconcerting, but if you want to know what people are thinking and feeling, then I think you can get that knowledge. And don't question your own psychic abilities too much, because there is something going on. Maybe it's just telepathy, or it may just be an awareness of what's going to happen next, what someone else is going to do next. And so you've got that, and so I don't think there's any need really to be surprised, because I think that fundamentally you have a good knowledge of human nature. But stick to what you need to know. I mean, you can't worry about what everyone is thinking and what everyone is feeling. I mean, then it would just be too much. But maybe you need to focus on, one or two people, think about, what they're going to do next, yet use that natural sensitivity, that natural telepathic ability to really understand what's going on, and also consider with Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune that something may well be in touch with you. Something is out there. It's the force of the universe, and I think that actually you've got a good line of communication there, which again I think it's something that you can use. Libra, you're feeling at the moment somewhat uncertain. I mean, a lot of people are feeling uncertain at the moment. I mean, part of it is to do with the fact that Mercury is moving towards a sesquiquadrate with Neptune. And, this Mercury Sesquiquadrate Neptune, might mean that, other people could be a problem. I mean, it's not that they're deliberately trying to be a problem, but it just could be just difficult to, work out what people are doing, what people want, what they're up to. They're certainly providing you with a lot of information, but the information may just at times be, difficult to work out, and you don't want too much confusion, but you just might find in general that things are confusing, particularly if you take on too much. And so I would suggest, Libra, that you don't spend too much time worrying about what other people are doing, what other people are up to. I mean, being a Libra, you have a natural curiosity, a social curiosity, but you might think that you can be objective and just sort of look at things from a distance, but it's going to be difficult to be objective. I mean, I think you could be drawn in by other people, the noise they make, the ideas they have, and you've got to think about yourself. I think that is important, especially now when we have Venus starting to move towards an opposition of Saturn, and this Venus-Saturn opposition is exact in a couple of days' time, and so it might just relate to someone getting in your way. I mean, this Venus-Saturn opposition is right across the main horizontal of your chart, Venus in Libra, Saturn in Aries, and you just find that someone is blocking your path, or just someone requires a lot of attention. And if you give someone a lot of your attention, well, where does it stop? And you might find that you don't have any time left for yourself. So be very wary of other people, and you might be dealing with someone who is, in many respects, weaker than you. Saturn's in Aries. Saturn is fallen in Aries. Venus, by contrast, is in its own sign, and so. But just because someone is weaker than you, is not as well positioned as you, doesn't mean to say that they can't waste a huge amount of your time. Okay, I'm not indicating that they're going to be permanently weaker than you, but it just could be something that does spoil not just today, but the next couple of days as this Venus opposition Saturn sort of develops. But it could be, Libra, that it is an unavoidable confrontation. There is perhaps someone you do need to deal with and relate to, but just make sure it doesn't get out of hand. That is important, because otherwise, things could just drag on, and you might find that you've just got no time left. and at the same time, you could just be exhausted by another person's continual presence. So Libra, it really is important that you keep moving and you keep your options open, and perhaps make it a rule that you're not going to spend more than 10 minutes with any one person. Just keep moving, keep circulating. And while this is happening, we have got a mutual reception between the Moon and Mars. Well, we've still got a mutual reception between the Moon and Mars. This Moon-Mars mutual reception, we've had it for the last couple of days, while the Moon has been in Scorpio, and Moon and Mars being in each other's signs. And, normally Moon in Scorpio is a problem. It's fallen in Scorpio. But, when it's a mutual reception to Mars, it works in a different way. And I think that this Moon-Mars mutual reception for you is going to be something, fairly fortunate. It allows you to get yourself together, provided you get the right focus, like not spending all day talking to one person, instead thinking about, what is important to you, thinking about your ambitions, because I think right now you do have clear ambitions. That might be about, status, power, getting enough attention. There might well be a financial side to your ambitions. If you want to get the money side of things together, then I think you can. It's not something that you necessarily want to do, but if you do start thinking about money, I think you can do a good job. I think a lot of things will start to become clear, and maybe it's just about sticking to what is important and not allowing yourself to be distracted. And so if you look after yourself, then I think things should be fine. And additionally, I've just said that other people can be a problem. Some other people can be a problem. Not everyone is a problem, and it might well be that over the course of the day, there is focus on like two people. There might be just two people to think about. One of these people could really work for you. They could really be helpful. And the other person could just be a total waste of time. They could just completely drive you around the bend and just exhaust you. And so maybe you have to make the right choice and decide which person you want to prioritize, which person you want to spend time with, which person you want to listen to. But don't spend too long with any person, whoever they are, because a person who starts off as being helpful could be completely unhelpful if you do spend too long with them. So you're a Libra. It is all about balance, and if you get that balance right, then I think today could really work. And talking about your ambitions, ambitions are not just mindless. You have ideas, and I think that your ideas, are coming in, thick and fast. And I think that it is a time when you can actually start to think about how you use these ideas. And you might have ideas about how you can be successful, how you want to proceed with your agenda. And so I think that it's a good idea to work on these ideas and perhaps to be, quite assertive about pushing through these ideas. And you might not get immediate results, but if you keep going, you keep pushing what is important to you, then in the end you're going to start making an impact. Scorpio. Like yesterday, the Moon and Mars are in mutual reception. The Moon is in Scorpio, Mars is in Cancer. Moon and Mars are in each other's signs. So you continue to really benefit from the situation. It does give you real strength, because don't forget, Mars is in Cancer, and so Cancer, it's not the greatest sign for Mars to be in. Sure, Mars rules the water signs, but it is also fallen in Cancer. But when the Moon is in Scorpio, it gives Mars dignity. You give yourself dignity, and so that's something that you can really develop, and it just does say something about you and your presence. And I think that actually today you have a pretty powerful presence, and you have the ability not just to get things done, but you also have the ability to just interact. I think that you're able to present yourself well. And even when you're dealing with people you don't really know. And so if you want to, make new contacts, make new friends, give your popularity a boost, I think that you certainly can. And additionally, Scorpio, we have a build up to a first quarter moon. So in the United States this evening there is a first quarter moon. Okay, the first quarter moon is not going to be until tomorrow if you're not in the United States. Okay, if you're in Tahiti, yeah, maybe, but in general, outside the Americas, let's make that clear. Yeah, the Americas might see a first quarter moon this evening, and Tahiti, because Tahiti is in that sort of Western time zone. It's considered to be far west, but you're probably not in Tahiti. But outside the Americas and Tahiti, by and large, that first quarter moon is going to be tomorrow. And so this first quarter moon is certainly relevant to you because it's in Scorpio, because you got Sun in Leo, Moon in Scorpio, and this goes back to the eclipse. So we had the eclipse a week ago. I think it was a very important eclipse for you, Scorpio. That eclipse was, when you had the Sun and Moon in Leo, the Sun and Moon in a sort of high-profile part of your horoscope. So, that was good. And now with the Moon in Scorpio, there is a bit of a challenge here, because it's all very well to have, the ambition, but how do you actually ground that ambition? How do you actually make it happen? And with the Moon in Scorpio starting to make a square to the Sun, you're thinking, okay, the eclipse was interesting. You had a lot of direction from that eclipse, but what now? What are you actually going to do? And so Moon in Scorpio is about you in the world and how you present yourself, and you making a decision about what exactly you are going to do, and how the whole thing is going to unfold. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do anything today, but you have that impulse and you realize that something has to happen, perhaps between now and the full moon, because we've got a full moon in a week's time. We've got that full moon is in Pisces. And, the thing about that full moon in Pisces is that if you've got the moon in Pisces, you've also got the sun in Virgo, because the sun will move into Virgo at the end of a week. And perhaps when the sun moves into Virgo, Scorpio, this is the time when you can start to actually act in terms of whatever you've worked out, whatever you've worked out at the time of the time of the eclipse. But you haven't got all the time in the world, and I think that's perhaps how you feel about this first quarter moon. But it is positive because of that mutual reception between the moon and the Mars. But I think the first quarter moon is positive anyway, but that moon-Mars opposition just does give you that dynamism. So yeah, I don't think you have to wait until the full moon. I don't think you have to wait until the sun goes into Virgo, actually, thinking about it. I think that now, it's Wednesday, it's halfway through the week. I think it is a time for some kind of action, some kind of resolution, and you making a decision. And I think that once you get going, I think that you can really start to realize the full potential of the eclipse that was a week ago. Sagittarius. Well, Sagittarius, I think that you do feel sort of motivated, in your own way. You are having, I think, powerful thoughts. They're not just thoughts, actually. It's ambitions as well, and there are things that you really want to do, that you want to get them off the ground. And it's been a long time working on certain things, and it hasn't always been easy, and you nonetheless have these sort of ambitions which you can't stop thinking about. And just now might be the time to really think about how you are going to get it together. And you look at the moon. The moon is in Scorpio. Sure, it's in late Scorpio, but the moon is about to move into Sagittarius. Tomorrow the moon will be in Sagittarius, and I think that when the moon does move into Sagittarius, moves into your sign, that will be the time to really get moving on things. And I think you certainly shouldn't be feeling too frustrated today. It just might be that the time has not quite arrived, but the ambition, Sagittarius, is certainly there. It's a very powerful ambition. It's not something that you're revealing to everyone. I think to an extent you are keeping it to yourself. Perhaps you're not sure how other people would respond, and or you perhaps take the view that the only person you can trust is you yourself, and that's a reasonable view. I'm not saying other people are untrustworthy, but I think you do have what it takes, or at least very soon you're going to have what it takes. I think perhaps now with Moon and Scorpio, you're still in the mood for sort of thinking and reflecting, and there might be an emotional side to things which just could be holding you up a little. But very soon things are going to change, and if you have something that you are almost obsessed about, an idea or a plan that you're obsessed about, do keep going. Now, while it's probably the case that there's not a great deal you want to say, if you are in a position to communicate, then I do think that you can actually be very effective. You can be very persuasive. So if you have something you want to discuss, or you want to change someone's mind about something, then today I actually think you can do it. I think you can really do a good job, and it maybe you'll just have insights into another person's weaknesses, or perhaps into their fears or into their greed, just something about another person's character and psychology that you will understand. And you will perhaps know how to pull the strings. I'm not saying that you should do that. I mean, you've got to think about things from a moral perspective. You've always got to think about things from a moral perspective. You're a Sagittarius. But if you feel that it is the right thing to do to be persuasive, I think you can be. And I think that you can have a real power to you, and I think that you can make a lasting impression. And if you want to change hearts and minds, I think quite possibly you can. Capricorn. Today, I think that you're quite capable of understanding the limits of things. You can go so far, but you realize that something has to stop, that if one were to carry on in a particular direction, it wouldn't really work. And you understand that in terms of yourself, but you can also see it in terms of other people and how other people are behaving. I mean, you can do your best with yourself. I mean, you can look after yourself, you can make your own decisions, but of course it can sometimes be difficult moderating, what other people are doing. And, one of the things going on today is that we have a first quarter moon. Well, we have a first quarter moon late in the day if you're in the Americas. Not until tomorrow if you're not in the Americas. But, the moon is in Scorpio, sun is in Leo. So there is this sort of first quarter moon feeling to today because we just had we had the new moon eclipse a week ago, and now the moon has moved on. It's in Scorpio. Of course, the sun is still in Leo, and so with this last quarter moon, I think that you're aware of the limits of yourself and other people, and perhaps you're aware of the limits of cooperation. It's nice to cooperate. It's nice to do things in a team. It's nice if everyone is on the same wavelength, but that very often just isn't real, and people can't necessarily work together. And I think that this last quarter moon is perhaps making you really recognize this. And while the sun has been in Leo, I think that you've been looking at things in a different way. You have felt yourself to be somewhat separate. And the question, then is how separate do you need to be? I mean, there are limits both ways. I mean, there are limits to how much social cooperation you can have. But at the same time, there are limits to how separate you can be. I mean, you might like to think that you can do everything on your own, but there are limits to that. And so if we're talking about limits, then, we might be talking about moderation as well, to take a sort of an intermediate position that one can cooperate to some extent. One can do things completely on your own to some extent. And as far as other people are concerned, of course, we've got Mars. Mars is still in early Cancer. I mean, Mars is going to be in Cancer in your opposite sign until the end of September. So it's got 5 weeks or something like that to go before Mars moves out of Cancer into Leo. And at the moment, the moon is in mutual reception to Mars, and so Moon and Mars are strengthened by that aspect. And so I would have said, don't give up on anyone. Okay, they might not be able to achieve everything. You can't idolize anyone, but everyone needs to be given a chance, and it might be that the right person can be very useful to you up to a point. And additionally, in terms of close relationships, I think the Moon Mars mutual reception does suggest that someone who might seem rather stubborn and resistant to change could actually be a real force for good, if you gave them a chance. But really, are you going to give anyone a chance? And one of the main aspects going on, okay, it's not exact today, but we do have an opposition forming between Venus and Saturn. And when you think about Venus and Saturn, you think that that's quite a heavy duty aspect, that there are things from the outside that are going to maybe make us miserable and so on. But hold on, Saturn's you. And with Venus opposition Saturn, you have to be sorry about the phone. I should try and turn it off, but I don't think I've got the opportunity. Venus opposition Saturn is about potentially you, Saturn, having quite a negative impact on another person, represented by Venus. And it would be a shame if Saturn, you, were to be too stuck in your ways. And so, whenever you're with another person, really ask yourself how you are occurring to them, because you might be giving off signals that you just don't know where you're giving off, and maybe you're coming over as being too judgmental, too stuck in your ways. And this applies not necessarily to relationships or one-to-one relationships. It might also say something about opportunity and work and progress. Maybe there is someone out there who is creating a possibility for you. Maybe they're giving you an opportunity, and it's possible that you don't respond in the right way, and as a result you might miss an opportunity because you're too focused on making sure that everything's okay in your world, and you don't consider the possibility that just something else might be going on. So I think Capricorn, it's very important right now that you give people a chance, because if you don't give people a chance and you just don't give anyone an opportunity to express themselves, then you might be missing out on something quite important. Aquarius. You remain, I think, quite ambitious. I mean, relatively ambitious. And we have the moon still moving through Scorpio, and it is still in mutual reception to Mars. And so because of that Moon-Mars mutual reception, I think Aquarius, you're able to really get going on things. I think that there are things you want to achieve, and once you've decided that you're going to do something, I think you're just going to want to just carry on, maybe in bulldozer mode. Once you've made a decision, once you know that one particular course is the right course, you can probably see it through. And I think that your ability to just get yourself together, to get everything together, to make sure that things are just properly organized and you haven't left anything to chance, I think all of that, I think you'll be very good in that department. I mean, I know that doesn't sound very interesting, but there is stuff that needs to be done, and I think that there's stuff that needs to be done. So perhaps it might be 3 steps forward, 1 step back, and that 1 step back is just making sure that the ground is cleared, that there isn't sort of garbage from the past holding you back. And so I think that there are reasons to be optimistic about what can be achieved today. Now, we do have a last quarter moon. Well, this last quarter moon is when the moon is, sorry, not the last quarter, first quarter, sorry. We have a first quarter moon. Because we had the new moon eclipse about a week ago, and the moon is getting bigger in the sky, and so there's our first quarter moon. And so what we have is we have the moon in Scorpio square the sun in Leo, and it could be that if you want to make real progress, there is someone that needs to be considered, represented by the sun in Leo. It could be someone who is powerful, is at the same time quite set in their ways, and you don't want to have to engage with this person, but perhaps you should. So if you are thinking about your ambitions and what it is that you're trying to achieve, there could be some sort of mini crisis with this first quarter moon. Again, I'm talking about a crisis in a positive sense. Someone you have to deal with, someone you have to engage with. It's not necessarily going to be easy, but I think you kind of need to go through with it, in order to make the most of that eclipse. And of course, that new moon eclipse a week ago, was in Leo. It was in your opposite sign. So that eclipse, in many respects, was about relationships, and it might be also with this moon square sun that you are starting to think that maybe your ambitions, what it is that you want to achieve, is perhaps in conflict with just another person. So I don't know, it might be that there's a clash between a relationship and your work. I mean, that is a way of looking at it. And additionally, Aquarius, you're capable of being quite tough in your own way right now, and not just today, but over the next couple of days. And that is because Venus is moving towards an opposition of Saturn, and Saturn is, of course, your ruler. Saturn rules Aquarius. So, with Venus making an opposition to Saturn, it may be that you are quick to be dismissive of something that you don't understand, that you're not interested in, but you are interested, and you are disinterested. And so someone comes along, and perhaps they have ideas, they can suggest sort of new possibilities to you, but part of you don't want to know. Just doesn't seem relevant. And so is that really the impression you want to give? I mean, Aquarius is supposed to be an open-minded sign, but I think with that Venus opposition Saturn, you could actually be quite close-minded. You could be close-minded in a sense of just not giving someone a chance to fully explain themselves, particularly if you're confronted with something which might seem, unusual or alien, something just beyond your normal experience, and you just want to close things down. And so I wouldn't do that. I think that you need to be open to all possibilities, and you've got to give people a chance. And there may be one person in particular who's really got something to offer, and it would be a shame if you just close them down. Pisces, like yesterday, the moon is in mutual reception with Mars. So the moon is in Scorpio, like it was yesterday, and Mars is in Cancer, like yesterday. But they're in each other's signs, and they're both in water signs. And so I think that you continue to benefit from this mutual reception. Okay, it may not be as powerful as yesterday because there was a sort of a trine relationship between the moon and Mars yesterday, but that trine doesn't exist anymore. But I mean, at least not in terms of degrees, 120 degree aspect, but which a trine is. But there's still a good relationship between the moon and Mars, and I think that really that does help you. This moon Mars, because they're both in water signs, there is an emotionality to those two planets, but it's an emotionality that I think very much works for you, and I think that you have a powerful sense of what is happening around you, and I think you're very sort of tuned into your own feelings, and additionally you haven't forgotten what is important, and there may be certain things that really do matter to you, that you really want to emphasize, and it may go so far that you regard it as important to be persuasive. I mean, you have ideas about the way things should be working out, and you want people to listen to you. And if you really express your opinions, I think that you're going to be someone who is difficult to ignore. So if you want support, or if you want people to change their mind about something, I think that you actually can be, pretty successful, and you'll know what to say. And with the Moon and Mars both in being in water signs, you'll just have a natural sensitivity to other people and their own concerns, and you'll be able to address these concerns. And so I think that this does mean that you possibly have a certain position of leadership, if you want to have a position of leadership. But of course, if people take you seriously and they're ready to follow your lead, that does give you a certain amount of responsibility. And another thing is that we do have a first quarter moon, and this first quarter moon could be about the beginnings of turning theory into practice, or perhaps planning into practice, because we had the new moon eclipse about a week ago, and so with this new moon, you perhaps had ideas about how you wanted to change certain aspects of your life. There may have been old routines which had kind of been sort of past their sell-by date, and I don't know how much work you did on it but over the last week. But now with this first quarter moon, with the moon in Scorpio square the sun in Leo, you know that you have to go beyond the plan. You have to start to think about something much broader, and I think that it is all about a vision, because you don't want to get stuck on the planning stage. You want to move to the next level, and I think you do have a vision. It's quite an important vision, and this vision is real, and that's perhaps one of the reasons why you want to be persuasive. If you have got a vision, you'd like other people to share this vision, and so this can certainly be reflected, in what you say, how you communicate, and overall, Pisces, I think it is a day when you just have a natural power. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to turn to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 18, which is illness. Now, in the Wilhelm translation of the I Ching, it calls this work on what has been spoilt. I mean, there's quite a lot of words. The advantage of illness is it's just a single word. Illness is the phrase, or the word used by Greg Winkup in his translation of the I Ching. And it's not a time to panic here. When it's talking about illness, it's talking about, sure, a problem. It could be a long-lasting problem. That's something that's been around for a long time, and there's this strong hint in I Ching that it's the kind of illness that can be cured. And I must make it clear, I'm probably not talking about a physical condition, remembering that the Wilhelm translation talks about work on what has been spoiled, or it might be about decay, something that is rotten, a can of worms, and it's just developed over time. And now we need to think about, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to resolve the issue? And so we have a moving line here. The fifth line moves. So in the I Ching, the fifth line is usually the most fortunate line. I don't know about usually, but it tends to be fortunate, the fifth line. At least more fortunate than the third line. The third line is often quite a problematic line. So with the fifth line moving, what the I Ching tells us is that we have to deal with problems caused by the father, problems from the past caused by the father. Maybe that is relevant to you. I'm not saying it is. I think we don't want to be too literal about it, but sometimes one can be literal. So it may be the case that if you have a father, even if your father is no longer alive, that something your father did needs to be resolved. That is a way of looking at it. But in general, it's just about something that's gone wrong. May not be your fault, and you do have a chance to deal with the matter. And the I Ching is really saying that you really can be successful, and if necessary, it may be to create a new start. So you have a problem, things are in a state of decay, and you take action and you begin something new. And so it's just about a complete restructuring. And by restructuring something, by addressing the problem, you are praised. And that's it's quite clear that you've done the right thing. So going back to this hexagram, if we call it illness, you can see that it is an illness which definitely can be addressed, and we can maybe start again and put something on a stable footing. We don't want to be sort of completely caught up in the past. I mean, you might see this also if you going back to the father issue of something psychological. So it might say something about your memories of your father, your relationship with your father, how you've internalized your father, and now you have an opportunity to really think about it. So the hexagram could be entirely psychological, and but it is really saying that you can really make progress here, and things will start to become clearer. An alternative definition of the hexagram, which Greg Wincup gives, I mean, Greg Wincup's interpretations are sometimes in his book on I Ching, sometimes seem to be slightly different from that given by the Wilhelm translation and the Legge translation, because the Legge and the Wilhelm translation, are pretty similar by and large. They don't really contradict one another, but Wincup talks about looking after one's father. So it's not just the problems caused by the father, but tending for one's father. So I don't know, if your father is still alive and your father is unwell, or he's got a problem, it's suggesting that maybe you can do something to help your father, and if you do that, what you do, will be praiseworthy. And then, because we've got a moving line, we do move to a second hexagram. So the fifth line moves, and so the bottom trigram represents the wind. The top trigram represents, it's quite an earthy trigram. But when the fifth line moves, that top trigram moves from being an earthy trigram to being the wind. So you move to the wind over the wind, and that takes us to hexagram number 57, which is the gentle. And the gentle, we sort of move on. The wind that perhaps had got stuck, the air that had got stuck, the flow that had got stuck, it starts to really move again. And the gentle is also about problem solving. There is a problem, and the wind looks through everything. The image I like to have with the gentle is of maybe a large old house perhaps a haunted house, and the wind just goes through it. It goes right the way through the house, and it's looking for the problem. It's looking for the darkness. It's looking for the evil. And maybe that's what this hexagram is about. Given that the previous hexagram was working on what has been spoilt, finding the source of a problem in the past, the gentle just continues with the theme. One is moving everywhere, and in the end, one has a chance to find out, what the problem is. And once one finds out what the problem is, one has a chance of resolving it. And that's it. That's all I've got to say for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description. As you know, I have started the membership section of my channel. I'm just about to put up a video on hypothetical planets. I mean, that's what you get. That's the main thing you get for being a member of the channel. Every week I put up an extra video. And the video I'm about to put up, is about hypothetical planets. So that might be of interest to you. So I'm just telling you about the memberships. I might have to do that, but you're probably not watching this anymore because this is right at the end of the video. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this video again, and I will be talking to you again tomorrow.